agents onto that list. Now, AI agents, let's move on, are taking the world by storm. So this is a chart of how many API calls are being made per day, broken down by month this year. So we get to about the middle of the graph, and that's the end of this month, and then everything beyond that is a projection. But everything prior is what's happening now. So the blue line is us. That's the developers. That's the automations. And our usage of APIs has been climbing little by little every day. Now, if we backtracked many, many years, it would look like that, just slightly down. We haven't really changed that much in how much we've used APIs or made API calls every day. But if you look at that orange line, that is a much steeper slope. It almost looks exponential, kind of. Maybe if we zoomed out, it would look exponential. But the point is about in May of this year, the AI agents are winning. They end up making more calls per day than we do. And that trend over time is only going to continue to go up and up and up. And that separation between these two lines is only going to get further and further, which means, if you think about it, humans are still going to use the APIs that we're building, but to a much smaller degree of what AI agents are going to be doing. Now, the usage has changed, the market share has changed, but also so has behavior. Expectations of how the APIs that we're building and consuming are different. A lot of times we'll see people that want to just say, why can't I just figure out what I want? I can ask Alexa something and it can tell me what I want. Or I can ask ChatGPT to do something and it tells me what I want. Why can't all APIs just do that? Well, that's not how we've designed them in the past. That's why we're here right now. So if we're talking about, should I eat that red egg? Let's keep coming to that. Because that's an important question as far as this presentation is concerned and in life as well. The process we're used to, developers. Let's say we're trying to figure out, should I eat this red egg? We're going to go to the website, the docs site for this API that we're integrating with. We're going to read through. Docs are nice. They have a nice story. They have business use cases along with the ins and outs. We're going to pick the endpoints needed. Usually it's not just one. Usually it's a whole bunch of different endpoints. We're going to build the logic. We're going to chain them all together. We're going to take the output from this one and use it as the input for this one. And then we're going to go eventually and get our answer. Easy enough. In the experience, as we've all seen, yay, we have really nice story-driven documentation. We have business use cases directly in there. And if we're really lucky, we get good quality API documentation. And this is a rendering of an open API spec. If you guys have ever used that, highly recommend Swagger. It makes these really, really nice, robust documentation. And it lists everything. So let's do this. Let's figure out, should I eat this red egg with these endpoints? Well, if we're trying to figure it out, the first one we're going to do is we're going to list our eggs. Honestly, I wish I had like any other room besides this one where the TV was way bigger. Take my word for it, that one is the list eggs endpoint. We're going to find our egg. We're going to load it by ID. We're getting all the information that we can about it. But unfortunately, that endpoint doesn't have everything that we need. So we're going to call the storage endpoints. We're going to figure out how is this egg stored. We're going to see all of its lifelines. It was stored here, 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 and here. We're going to load each one of those to get information about the storage of that egg, about its entire life. But that's not enough either. Now we're going to go in and we're going to see, well, has this egg always been red? Maybe the inspections that we had after it was laid, it was white. So we're going to list all the inspections, and then we're going to iterate over each one and figure out, what happened to this freaking egg. And we have it right now, so we might as well, while we're here, add a new inspection. It's red now, so let's leave it better for the next guy. But because we do our due diligence, we're also going to figure out, are the other eggs in this batch also red? Another key indicator, do we need to do something with the rest of the eggs? So we'll list those, get that batch, and then we'll put in a note that this one is red. That's how we work. That's how humans work. Agents don't. that is not what they have access to. AI agents can't go to doc websites and read story and figure out the business context. They don't get to go in and read the open API specs. What they have access to are tools. And they have to rely on themselves to build out these workflow via chain of thought. So they get this big list of tools, and then they say, okay, well, I probably need to do these 10 things. I built this in here because I didn't know what everybody's experience was with AI, but from all the talks I've been to, you guys probably know what a tool is. But it is code that AI agents are running. Made popular by MCP. And in many cases these days, the trend I've been seeing when I put my ear to the ground and I hear what people are building, a lot of times our APIs are being taken, wrapped, and given to LLMs by not us. It's integrators that are doing it. It's solo devs that are doing something. It's whoever else. The point is, not me. And because of that, there's some work that we have to do in API design to account for it. With the big thing being toolability. Now, that is a word. And what it means is it means really defining your API endpoints strongly. You need to do some very critical things that makes it really easy for somebody to come in with their open API to MCP generator. So it makes your API endpoints pickable, meaning the LLM knows which one it needs to call without a shadow of a doubt. They are fillable. I'll get to this in a second. And they're understandable. Really, the key here is remove all ambiguity, because we know what happens when LLMs are presented in ambiguous situations. They make stuff up. We don't want that. So let's look out, wrong way. Let's look at what an API spec or an endpoint definition would look like before, basically the docs we generate now, and after, which are ones that are really, really good for LLMs, for somebody to come in and basically steal your endpoints and use them on your behalf. We can see that okay, right? Yeah. So this one is the one that was written by the developer who was told by their boss, you have to write API docs. So they did, because they had to. And we get things like, okay, color, refrigerated, date, and float result. And that's it. And basically the bare minimum. These are the things that come in. Good luck. It's not going to fly with LLMs, especially when your data is being taken and used in a way that you may or may not have intended it to. So what we do is we have to make it pickable. Now, man, I can just keep going the wrong way. What does that mean? Now, when these generators run, they take your open API specs and they say, here's a tool. What they're looking for first is, what do I call it? I don't want to call it /eggs, egg ID inspections. I want to call it something meaningful that removes ambiguity. So we use operation IDs. Very easy, and that's the tool name. That's one of the things that is supported in the Open API spec. If you're not already doing it, super low lift. Just describe what you're doing in real tech, in natural language. Create egg inspection. What we also could do is make it fillable. I put a pin in this. We're taking that pin out. We're going to talk about it. We have to strongly define all of our properties in any way that we can. And what does that mean? Well, looking at the left side, we have color as a string, and we have, let's see, it doesn't look like anything's required, and date is also a string. But we can do better than that. All using API or Open API specification that exists today. So things like, well, let's say you can't add anything else to this endpoint. Just something that LLMs like to do. It thinks, I know better than you. I'm going to add more metadata. So it does. If we say additional properties false, that means, okay, no, I can't do that. We also have enums. What are the valid colors of an egg? We have, white, brown, red, blue, green. We have formats as well. You can also use regular expressions to say, if you have a string, it has to match a specific pattern. Really just narrow it down as tightly as it can. So when the LLM is reading this, it will read this. It knows what to send over to your API. And the last thing here, which is the understandable piece, is let's remove ambiguity in the property names. Let's remove ambiguity by providing examples. All of these things are going to be presented to the model when you give it your tool definitions. So keep doing that. So in our example here, we've changed color to shell color. Could have been the bird color before, I don't know. We changed date to laid at, because date could have been the inspection date, but no, we meant what date was the egg laid at. Then we have an actual meaningful example that has all the fields filled out. So we can go in and see, okay, well, what have I done before? So that's one. That's one. We're going to cover 3 big things today. 2, we have to assume a change in behavior, where the majority of our inputs to our API are going to be coming from LLMs. And the majority of the reads are going to be coming from us. Now, why do we say that? Well, who here, show of hands, another interactivity point, who likes filling out really long forms? Yeah, okay. I'm glad you didn't raise your hand on this one. So I don't. Nobody does. But you know who does? AI models do, because they were trained on the internet and on everything. And so if you add a bunch of fields to your API, that LLM is going to add those fields to that API. And you know what that's going to result in? Really rich data. Really rich data. And guess who benefits when you have really rich data? We do. Just super great. So just from this little swap in mentality where I'm going to assume AI is doing all the ingress and me as a human and my other human peers are doing the egress, we really can optimize our API design for that pattern. How? Well, for writes, let's talk about this. So who's doing the writes? The agents are doing the writes. We can load up our API endpoints now with optional fields. Optional, not required, because we can't throw humans to the wind in case we're still doing some of the data entry. So we're going to have as many properties as we can think of and make them optional. LLMs are always going to fill those out. Yeah, so right there was the optional piece, only making the tag required for humans. Validate everything. So again, what do LLMs do when they don't know the answer? They make stuff up. So when it comes to the actual implementation piece, your code backing these endpoints, you need to make sure that you're actually doing proper data validation. Things like, are these dates in the future? Are the chicken breeds that are being passed in here, are they real? Don't just trust that the data coming in is legit. Now that's not new. You should always be doing that, and we should have been doing that for all of our careers, but it's extra important now. The last thing here, and this is kind of a novel concept unless you do strict REST, is build in chain of commands. Then now what? So let's say we add a chicken into our system. What do we do now? Well, we can add things in our responses that say, well, usually when we add chickens into the system, the next thing you're going to want to do is schedule it for an inspection. And so you give it the operation ID, which is the tool name for that LLM. It'll pick up on that and say, oh yeah, okay, I can probably do that next. And also on the error side, when things do go wrong, include that step in there to say, hey, you messed up the data, you need to fix that. Or in other scenarios, you need to go fix this other entity before you can update this one. So making sure you tell it in the response what you can do next, what are your options. That way you can kind of coax the LLM to do it what you want. Reads. I'm going to start picking up the pace here because still got a lot left and we have 8 minutes left. Reads. So us. How do we adapt for us? Well, we're going to assume that we now have extremely rich data in our system that the LLM is generously donating to us. So what we have to do is to kind of taper things back. I don't always want 100 fields for a specific entity. So what we can do is we can build in named views into our gets. So we have things like a profile view. Give me everything. Or in most cases, I want a summary view. What are the most important fields on this entity specifically that I can use for the majority of my use cases. I don't need to load everything. And then, of course, you can do things like a compact view, where you say, just give me the things that I need to put this thing in a list, or just give me the bare minimum that I can do something and interact with it later. So how do we do that? Because I'm not going to build 3 endpoints for a get for every single get in my API. Well, what you can do is you can actually build that into a query string parameter, an optional one. Or you can decide if that query string parameter is not there, what's the default view that I'm going to provide. Often it's going to be the summary. Then you can, optionally call the give me everything or just give me some. Okay, 6 minutes. Do more. It sounds like a joke. It's not a joke. Now, what does do more mean? This is a guinea fowl, by the way. Fun bird. So let's look at a workflow. The workflow we talked about at the very beginning. Should I eat this red egg? Right? We have our list eggs, and then we're going to go and get the egg by ID. Then we're going to do the storage records, the inspections, the batches, and then we'll arrive at our answer, yes or no. Should we eat this egg? Probably no. As humans, it's really easy to build. Easy subjective. But we do know how to do this. This is a solved problem in many, many different frameworks and use cases. So that's great. Humans, no problem. We don't actually need to do more when we're just banking on humans using our API. However, here's the pause. AI agents, they're unpredictable. I said this the other day. Well, we want our AI agents to act like firstborn children, where you tell them to do something, and they do that thing, and they do it really well. But as of today, AI agents typically act like second-born children, where they don't do that. They don't do that. So why is that? Well, that's because there's a lot of planning variance, so they're not deterministic, right? So you ask an LLM to do something, if you ask it 10 times, it's going to give you 10 different answers. Not exactly the same, also not exactly different, but when we're talking about large workflows, you got to accommodate for that. So if something goes wrong, so let's say it does this plan, let's say it nails, these are the 10 tools I need to call in this workflow, and it goes through and something fails, well, it's going to say, shoot, that failed, I didn't expect that, let me replan. Let me figure out what I need to do now. And it might take a detour, and ultimately you're going to get an answer that went maybe the wrong way. It doesn't have all the exactly right things. Last thing here for agents is you run into context pressure. And that really just means if this keeps iterating over and over, it's going to keep building up this context window. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're going to get like prompt dilution. And you're going to have the LLM weaken in performance because it's trying to work with so much data. So let's walk through what an agent would do in this situation. So list eggs, good. Let's keep going. List storage records, good. List inspections, oh shoot, that failed. Let me replan. Let's figure out what to do. Okay, we should do list batches now instead. Skip list inspections, that never ended up working. Now it's gone to the batches. And it thinks, okay, well, you know what? Maybe there was something wrong with the shipment that came in. So now it's gone completely off course. It's learned about the shipments. And now it's like, what was I doing again? Red egg? And then it gives you this tangentially related answer that isn't really what you were looking for. The answer to that is build workflow endpoints. Do more. So maybe instead of relying on these 10 endpoints that we had before, we have one. Assess egg edibility. Now you, the developer, the owner of these endpoints, this API, get to control what happens. So this one can be an entire workflow where it loads the egg and then it fans out and does all these things. And then it's like, okay, well, we need to go update while we're in here. And we're going to consolidate everything. We're going to turn the results. No, don't eat that red egg. That is a bad idea. So not only do you control what the workflow is, it's deterministic at this point, meaning you can run it 100 times. You're going to get the same result 100 times. You also get the opportunity to increase performance by fanning out operations, so on and so forth. So practical build tips for workflows. You, as the owner of the API, need to pay attention. You need to look at your logs, look at your metrics. who's using what in what order. You need to really hone in on the business use cases that people are using your API. And once you figure that out, then you can determine, is it worth me building these extra workflow endpoints for the users? Now remember, people are going to steal this and they're going to turn that into tools. So you need to be very explicit when you're documenting what this does. These are all the actions that it does. These are the rights that it's going to do when you actually go and make a call. And this is what you should expect on the other side. And then lastly, this is a whole conversation in itself. When you're doing workflows, you always need to design for item potency and compensating transactions, because agent's going to fail. They're going to try again. They're going to get retry storms. So you don't want a bunch of data coming in multiple times. And consequently, if something fails and you abort, you don't want a bunch of orphan data. So you have to have ways to back out of the things that were created. Okay. Yes. 1 minute left. So recap. Here we go. People will steal your API endpoints and turn them into AI tools for themselves. And that's important because that means we have to be very explicit in how we define the documentation of how to use the endpoints, which is everything we just talked about. Let's create those operation IDs. Let's create those very meaningful property names. Let's include the enums and anything else that we can to remove ambiguity. There is going to be a data overload if we go and we design these endpoints to accept a bunch of data, a bunch of new optional parameters. You have to be prepared for that. You can't just keep serving 100 different fields every time something gets called. So that's something we could do, implement caching in there, but definitely something like, let's pare down those views. Something like GraphQL is actually really useful for that. And then lastly, and probably ultimately the most important one for long-term success with business outcomes, is pay attention to what people are doing. Figure out what these big multi-step workflows are that everybody's doing. Build it yourself, and then to have that turn into a tool. That way these agents can reliably do it. Okay, nailed it. 5 seconds left. Thank you, everybody. Remember, do not eat the red eggs.